What is up, bike enthusiasts? It is your host, Bike Guy Alex, back with another bike build video. Today we are going to be working on this specialized rock hopper and potentially downgrading it from this suspension mountain bike into a gravel bike. The goal of this build and video was to take an older mountain bike and convert it into a gravel bike for myself. And I think that the term gravel bike is pretty silly because it's just an excuse for rich people to have another bike. But I did want a drop bar bike in my rotation. And I thought, what better way to do it than to convert an older mountain bike into a rigid gravel conversion. And so that's what we ended up trying to accomplish today. And as per the title and thumbnail of this video, we were able to accomplish something close to what I wanted with this bike build, but I did come across a bunch of not necessarily unforeseen problems, but I did come across a fair amount of problems that with the finished product that I have at the end of this video, I'm not completely happy with, and there is still things that need to be done to this bike for it to be that ultimate gravel conversion that I was going for with this bike build. So I do have a finished product for you today in this video, but there were a lot of things that still need to be done to this bike so that I am truly happy with it and will be ready to take it on some really cool bike rides in the future. So let's dive into this bike build. So obviously the first thing that we had to do was fully deconstruct this bike. I did end up leaving the cranks and bottom bracket in this bike because they felt really good the way they were and didn't feel like it needed a service, and I wasn't going to change anything with that. I still wanted it to be that 3x in the front, and yeah, bottom bracket felt good, so kept those things in there, but everything else had to get stripped down off of this bike. The front derailleur, rear derailleur were extremely dirty and disgusting. Whoever had this bike previous to me definitely used it as a mountain bike and used it for what it was worth, but did not really take good care of it because there was so much caked up dirt and mud on the rear derailleur. It was pretty horrendous, but that's no big issue for me because I can clean up these things super easily and get them back up into tip-top shape for this bike build. So yeah, taking everything off of the bike first, and then we will get into cleaning everything up and then reassembling the bike into this gravel bike conversion that I was going for. And then if anybody was curious on how the gear cable comes out of these newer trigger shifters, there is this little screw that you have to unscrew first to access the gear cable, and that screw is right by the triggers of the trigger shifter itself. Um, so yeah, you just have to unscrew that, and it's almost like a little dust cap to prevent any dirt or debris getting into your shifter, which is really cool. And after you take that off, you can just push your gear cable all the way through. So yeah, cool little trick tip with Bike Guy Alex. You're welcome. So on to removing the fork off of this bike. It was a little bit more difficult than I was hoping it to be. I was hoping that it would just kind of slide out after I took off the stem and bars, but that was not the case. So had to end up going to a wooden mallet to kind of gently tap it off so that the headset would remove and the fork would come out. And as long as you use your best judgment and be pretty gentle with it, you won't damage anything, which is really important. Um, so yeah, that's what I ended up doing. If you don't have a wooden mallet, you can always just take a piece of scrap wood or 2x4 or something and use that as kind of the barrier for the mallet that you're going to use to hit down on the fork, because we don't want to damage anything. So if you're using like a metal hammer versus your fork, you're going to damage something. Use some sort of barrier piece of wood to prevent any damages. So yeah, after I got the fork off, I wanted to do a quick mock-up and see how everything was going to look. And this is when I came across my first big issue of this conversion. So I picked out this really cool aluminum road bike fork to use on this conversion, and this is when I came across my first issue, which was these brake posts would not work with these 26-inch mountain bike tires that I was going to use for this bike. Here's a quick clip of me trying to see if it would work with these V-brakes, but as you can clearly tell, the brake posts are way too high, and this fork was not going to work with this conversion. Big bummer, because I thought the fork was really cool, and with an all aluminum frame, the aluminum fork would have been ideal, but that's okay because I did have another steel fork option to go to. So ended up having to go with the steel fork to fit the 26-inch tires, but that was okay. It is what it is. I think the aluminum fork looked better, but, it wasn't going to work. So then after that mock-up, I got to cleaning up the rest of this bike because it was absolutely caked in dirt and mud. So had to get it all cleaned up and ready for the build. So just using some soapy water and a little bit of vinegar in there to help eat away some of that grease and grime and potential rust that was going on there. And then after we got them all cleaned up, we just took the hose and sprayed them all down, dried them off, and we were ready to start the bike build process. on to the building process. I got a little ahead of myself and didn't film myself changing the crown race from the suspension fork to this new rigid steel fork, but I was able to do that, and it was significantly harder than I thought it was going to be, not having a crown race tool thing. But essentially, all you have to do is you can use flathead screwdriver, a piece of sharpened aluminum like Gary's projects, and a mallet, and you can kind of just tap it off nice and gently, and tap it up the old fork to get it off, and then you'll have to do that with the new fork as well if there's already a crown race on there. If there's not, then you can just take that old crown race and you can use any sort of tubing to fit over the fork and hit down the crown race back back onto the new fork. So after I did that, then I put the fork onto the bike, and as you can see, I had to use a ton of spacers, and I actually did not have enough spacers. I was missing one spacer to complete this bike. So that was issue number 2 that I came across. I did not have enough spacers for this fork and headset combo. And because I am a larger human being, I needed the full stack. So I can't really cut down this fork at all, for it to be comfortable for me. So I'm just going to have to get another spacer on there, which isn't the end of the world. Those are pretty easy to get and acquire, so should be pretty simple fix down the line. So yeah, got the stem and fork on there, and then put on these new drop bars. A nice pair of lightweight, I don't know if they're carbon or aluminum or what type of material they are, but they're nice lightweight Cannondale drop bars that I ended up throwing on this bike. And yeah, I think they look really good. I do prefer a bit of a wider bar, so these are a little bit tight for me, but I'll get used to it. And yeah, I think they look really good. So yeah, then I throw on the front brakes back onto the fork, and as you can see now with the correct fork, the brake posts are in a correct position and fit these wheels that I am using on this bike. Then I'm throwing on the shifter and lever road bike brake shifter combos. These are Shimano Ultegra brake lever gear shifter road bike thingies. Not sure what they're called. Anyways, kind of a cool story. When I was picking up this bike and parts out of the Village Bike Shed, shout out Village Bike Shed, my favorite place on the Gold Coast for bike parts and bikes, I met a guy that needed some help deconstructing his Colnago that he got in a car accident with and was completely totaled, but he wanted to strip down the frame and use the frame as sort of a display piece. So he wanted help stripping down the frame to just the frame, and he told me that I could keep any parts off of the bike that I wanted. So I ended up getting these Shimano Ultegra shifter brake lever combos for free, which was really nice. And they are beautiful and in great condition. So I was really stoked about that. But it did come with another sort of large issue with this bike conversion. Um, Now, if you are true bike nerds, you will already know what this issue is. And this was something that was on my radar with this bike conversion bike build that I was doing. But I was hopeful, per se. Um, or you could just say I was negligent in my thinking. But all brakes and all shifters have different pull ratios for them to be kind of maximized. And your traditional road lever does not have the same pull ratio for V brakes, which is kind of a major issue because I'm running V brakes on this bike. So as I set up these V brakes, I come across that first issue that I one can't really dial the brakes in to be perfect, and it's a lot harder without having um, a barrel adjuster anywhere to kind of dial in my V brakes. But beyond that, the braking on this bike is really soft because I have basically the wrong brake levers for V brakes. So the braking is really soft and not great. There's a couple kind of workarounds that you can go to and fix this problem. Um, One of which is V brake, like brake converter things, to help make that braking feel better, and also allow you to dial in your brakes even better with these conversion things. So yeah, there is kind of a workaround for this, which I'm going to look into in the future. And ultimately, if you were to, ask me, do the brakes work? The answer is yes, but they're pretty soft, which feels quite dangerous. But that's an issue that we're going to end up tackling in the future. The second issue that we came across using these shifter brake combo levers was, again, a different pull ratio for your shifters. Each trigger shifter has different pull ratios that work with typically very specific group sets. So these road bike shifters, I was a little concerned that they wouldn't have the right pull for this Dior LX group set that came on this bike that I wanted to use on this bike for it, for the conversion. So I was a little concerned about that, but when I got everything home, I checked the shifting on the rear mech with these road bike shifters, and it worked. It shifted, and I was like, oh, great. That means that they'll work on the front derailleur as well. This was really stupid assumption that I made because that was completely wrong. The front derailleur does not work with these road bike shifters, which was another issue that I came across. So I got everything set up and everything in place, and the front derailleur does not shift. No matter what I tried to do, I could not get the front derailleur to shift. So it will be something that I'm going to have to change out in the future. And I will most likely just change it out to the Shimano Ultegra front derailleur that came off that Colnago. So ultimately not the end of the world, and something that I have a solution for to fix, but was just kind of another slap in the face for this bike build that I wasn't prepared for. So yeah. So as of right now, I have the front derailleur limit screws positioned so that it sits in the middle front gear so that it is in a rideable condition and I can use the bike. But I will change out the front derailleur in the near future so that I can actually shift between the front gears. As for the rear derailleur, it does shift with this current setup and it actually shifts pretty buttery smooth. So no complaints there, and don't have to do any additional fixing for the rear derailleur. Anyways, although this bike does have soft brakes and the front derailleur does not shift, I decided to continue on and throw on the bar tape for this bike. Now, this bar tape is really, really cool. It is this sort of like leopard print, which I think looks really good with everything else that's on this bike. But the issue with this bar tape was that I found it for $6 at a thrift store here in Australia, and I think it was at a thrift store for a reason because it is really old and it's already like flaking off and like removing itself. So, yeah, I got really cool bar tape that is going to basically decompose and flake off within the next 3 or 4 rides I do on it. So, another issue that I came across during this bike build, which is pretty unfortunate, but maybe a little funny. So, yeah, I kind of had a huge failure on this bike build, but these are all things that I'm going to be able to learn from and implement in the future on future bike builds, and have some forethought on future bike builds to make sure that I don't run into these same issues continuously working on bikes. So this failure is pretty good for me. And although I am considering this a failure at this ultimate gravel bike conversion, the bike is still very much rideable. There are just a few things that still need to be done to get it to that ultimate gravel bike conversion point. So yeah, I do have a completed bike that you'll get to check out at the end of this video, but it does have its issues and does not meet that ultimate gravel bike conversion standard that I set out to build for this video. And it is what it is. I failed at this ultimate gravel bike conversion, but in the very near future, I will have another video doing a bike check on it, showing the updates that I have done to it to get it to that ultimate gravel bike standard that I was going for. And yeah, that's all we got for today. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, think about hitting the like button or subscribing for some really awesome future content from me, Bike Guy Alex. And yeah, that's all we got for today. Love you guys. Bike Guy out.